Welcome back to week 4 of the free agent episode. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up, buddy?
Good night of football. I was kind of interested in watching the Bills and Jaguars, but turns out that was a mollywhopping. So I ended up on the Bengals and Redskins instead. That was a good game. Jaden Daniels looks like he's putting it together.
Yep, I was out on the Jags. I was out like the second the other game started. I flipped over. I was done.
Yeah,
Awful,
Trevor
awful.
Lawrence. Time to start having a conversation. We'll probably do that for the head coach episode. But let's get down to business here. We're gonna start with the waiver wire.
Okay, my waiver wire first. It's the waiver wire is really thin this year, probably because of all the injuries, especially in leagues with two IR slots. You have guys that are stacking their roster, with additional picks. I cannot believe because I have some really injured rosters this year. Everyone does, I would assume. I cannot believe how thin the wire's been when I've gone to look. But I did see Alexander Madison is still on a lot of waiver wires, and all the points per game I put on here were in half PPR. Alexander Madison's almost at 11 half PPR points per game. He's got a touchdown in every game this year, and he had a 44% snap share this week. He gets the bulk of the receiving work, and I think in this last week alone, he's either come close to or outscored Zamir White's last 3 weeks combined. So should I don't know who Antonio Pierce was referring to when he said, we have guys here making business decisions and they need to go. I don't think it was in reference to Devonte Adams, but the general vibe there is that they're getting ready to kind of acknowledge the where their team's at. And Devontae makes no sense for this team, especially if Devontae goes, right? They're going to dump off the ball to running backs so much. It seems like White just can't get it together for whatever reason, and they're better off throwing passes out of the backfield. Alexander Madison may win the job outright based on his usage. He's already really close. And if Zamir White were to go down, I think he'd be like a high end flex, low end RB2 kind of player. Wandale Robinson, 24 targets, one rush attempt over the last 3 weeks. He's commanding between a 25 and 30% weekly target share on the Giants. Only 9.06 half PPR points per game, but he is clearly the number 2 on their offense. Their defense is not good. They have to pass a lot. If you're desperate for a receiver, probably more in full PPR. He's worth adding simply for the usage. This year, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to find guys that are getting reps. And then Andre Yosibas. Me and Ted were texting during the Bengals game. It was sort of like a meme pick this year. Take Burton, take Yosibas, these weird named, third wide receiver on the Bengals. And Boyd was never really particularly productive unless someone went down when he was with Joe Burrow. So I think it was sort of like a guys trying to sound smart when they said adding him this year. As it turns out, they were smart because he's done pretty well. He's got 13.7 points per game and half PPR the last 2 games. He has at least 4 red zone targets that I counted. It might have been 5. 3 touchdowns this year so far. If he's seeing red zone work like that, he's still got work with Higgins back in, and Burrow and him seem to have some chemistry. I mean, Burrow threw to him under pressure a few times. He was kind of coming back to him while Burrow was on the move. This passing attack is too lucrative. Jamar Chase has had injury problems. T. Higgins is always injured. It's just a good position to where he's almost like a handcuff wide receiver where he becomes a weekly starter should one of them go down. And in the meantime, last 2 weeks, 13.7 points per game. You could do a lot worse than to keep him on that last spot on your bench.
Question from the audience. Would you rather put in a claim on Wandale or Yoshi Boss?
That's Yoshi Boss for me.
Yeah, it is for me too. Last week, obviously, he had 2 catches for 7 yards and 2 touchdowns. I
Yeah.
thought that was just, what are you doing? Adding him, like, yes, classic, lots of fantasy points, but the usage doesn't suggest he's worth rostering. The usage in this game looked very good to me. He's actually getting relevant looks. Obviously, it's the Redskins, right? So keep that in mind. But yeah, I think in terms of what this waiver wire is, you could do worse. And Wandale too. I've kind of always been out on him, like as a player. He kind of reminds me of like the Human Torch on the New York Giants. But Malik Neighbors apparently is a force multiplier in getting Danny Dimes to play a little bit better. So
Yeah.
I used to
Dude,
say those targets weren't worth very much, but now they might be worth something. Who knows? Giants are looking better.
how funny was that tweet I sent you? Haven't officially announced on the channel. My new second team is the Giants. I'm a second string fan of the New York Giants. Very excited to be there. I've been exploring Giants Twitter all week this week. Giants Twitter is fucking lit, dude. Giants Twitter's dope. Okay, but one of the things, one of the funnier tweets I've seen was my season started with being concerned that Daniel Jones would ruin Neighbors. Now I'm worried that Neighbors is so good it's going to save Daniel Jones. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious, dude. Because like he was on his way out, they were talking about Shador Sanders to Neighbors next year, or Sam Darnold to Neighbors next year, Kirk Cousins if the team decides to go with Penix, whatever. And now it might be Danny Dimes for another year.
We'll
But
see, man. He's keeping me afloat in Superflex. I mean, not really, but he's been doing good enough. Um, anyways, we'll get to my waiver wire now. I don't really have much for you. It's kind of a tough week. I'm gonna go ahead and recommend Tug here. He's a temporary pickup for me, so like I would not hold him thinking that he's going to be an answer long term at quarterback, but he has the softest schedule possible the next 3 games. He plays the Raiders, who Andy Dalton just carved up. He plays the Redskins, who everyone carves up, and then the Eagles too, who they had a good defensive performance on Sunday, but I still think that back end is not very good. No fab on him. Just if you are a quarterback needy roster, super flex, that kind of thing, and he's sitting there, you might be able to ride him as like a QB2 option for the next couple weeks. Next is Xavier Legette for my new second team, the Carolina Panthers. This Sunday was the Ted second team Super Bowl between the Raiders and Panthers. The Panthers, they went out there, they put out a good performance. They won pretty decidingly. And unfortunately, Adam Thielen, while he caught a touchdown, his hamstring, his old 30-plus-year-old hamstring exploded. So he's going to be out for a while, and Xavier Legette immediately slotted in as the starting wide receiver in 2 wide receiver sets. This Panthers team, Andy Dalton is slinging it now. They look like an actual football team now that they fixed their Bryce Young problem. And I think it's going to be a focus for them to evaluate the young talent. Legette is the young talent. So yeah, fire him up. This guy actually I would drop some fab on anywhere in the neighborhood of $5 to $10. I would probably lean towards that lower end, maybe even less, depending on what your roster looks like. It really just depends on how desperate you are. But out of like a very thin waiver wire, he might have some value. Last is Noah Fant. This is just kind of my dart throw. Tight end is gross right now. It's just bad. Trey McBride just went down with a concussion. Sam Laporta had the ankle. Travis Kelce is a ghost right now. I think managers are going to be just looking for any points they can get. Seattle is passing a bunch. I was kind of talking about this earlier today. I think that like a lot of Geno Smith's yards are pretty empty right now. There's not that much going on. I still don't know how great he's playing, but they're looking to pass the ball right now. They're passing like 30, 40 times a game. He's a weapon in that offense. Not that inspiring, but I mean, if you need 5 or 6 points from your tight end position, I think it's probably worth a shot to go for a pass heavy offense as of now in Seattle. No fab guy. There's like a bunch of tight ends you can kind of throw the dart on. This was just kind of like the one I probably would go with.
Okay, so my buy low is pretty similar to last week. I believe he was on there last week too. CeeDee Lamb, nothing to really say about it. He's going to become untradeable at some point this year. He's just one of those dudes where when people hit you up, you just go, no, I'm not really going to trade it because what am I going to get for him? It's just a matter of when. Last year we saw the same thing, dip in production. He got in a fight with Dak Prescott, and then his production exploded afterward. He got in a fight with Dak Prescott this week. It looks like the Cowboys can't stop a nosebleed on defense, and it looks like they can't really run the ball to hold a lead. So I mean, Dak passed I think 56 times this week or 55 times. CD only saw 6 targets, by the way. So fans are panicked, owners are panicked. There's a whole lot of panic. I was laughing. I was texting Ted the other day about just all the chat in Yahoo's on fire. I am sending out offers like crazy for CeeDee Lamb. It's hard because he's so valuable, like in terms of just the fantasy kind of lore of him, that I get some like insane. I had a guy who wanted Rice and Neighbors for CeeDee Lamb. I'm like, no, don't do something like that. But see, if you can do like Godwin, if you could package someone like Godwin to get up to Lamb, even Drake London, if you could just stick someone on one of these guys, Devonta Smith, I love him, but depending on who you have on your roster, one of those kind of that tier that's a tier or two below him, and you can get up to CD, please try to do that. Same thing with Garrett Wilson and the same kind of guys I would be trying to trade for him. I got offered Godwin and Amari Cooper for Garrett Wilson this week. And the guy retracted it really quickly, but I'm kind of trying to save it. Like something like that. Look, Wilson owners will think about it depending on your roster and depending on if you need depth. If you were a really solid drafter this year, if you were a heady drafter and you're comfortable with your wide receiver depth, try a 2-for-1 for Wilson. I know it's been slow. I know it's been a problem. And if you took him in the first round, you're not thrilled. That does not mean that target share and that air yard share is not going to be beneficial going forward. He has some of the most elite usage in football from Aaron Rodgers. Aaron's slinging it. I know the play count's low, but I'm taking my shots on Wilson wherever I can. Mike Evans, pretty simple, tough cornerback matchups. Not worried about it at all. Fantasy Flock today was saying I'm not even moving him down a spot in my rankings. I know it has been a rough couple of weeks. There are better days ahead. Chris Godwin's absorbing a massive target share right now. Baker had a horrible game. Just a few things that didn't break right, but I think Mike Evans is probably pretty purchasable right now. Like extremely. I would be sending out offers all week. If you could do a Stephon Diggs for Mike Evans 1-for-1, I know Ted will not agree with that. I
No,
would be
no,
doing
you
that.
do that. You do that, and I'm the Diggs guy. Do it.
Yeah, you're the Diggs guy. I mean, dude, if you can do Diggs right now 1-for-1, I think you just do something like that. You could probably get for Godwin, you could get Mike Evans plus an upgrade at another position probably. There's just if you could do. This one's a lot closer, but I think I would do Jaden Reed for Mike Evans if someone would do Jaden. God, man, that's hard, but I think I would rather bet on Mike Evans rest of season. I would.
It's the safe bet, right? Like, it just depends on what your roster needs.
Yeah, like who would you prefer, Reed or Mike Evans going forward?
I think Reed is the high roll one, right? Like, I think Reed has more potential to like just explode, but it is like a sketchier situation, right? Like Jordan Love, a lot of people like him. I'm still not sure though. And like just that wide receiver room, I think there's still time for that pecking order to change. It's
Yeah.
really just Mike Evans and Godwin in a pass first offense. So I think that's the safer bet.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I would be trying to buy on Mike Evans. I think he is probably the cheapest he'll be all year. I think Garrett and CD are probably the cheapest he'll be all year. And one last one, the cheapest he'll be all year. ETN. Me and Ted had a little back and forth about whether or not Ted was going to put him on the sell list, which I don't entirely blame him for. The offense is looking bad, going downhill. He dealt with some competition from Tank Bigsby earlier this year. He's not getting the touchdowns like you would expect. I believe he's around like 11 and a half, 12 and a half PPR points per game. He's been like a middle RB2. Not what you're expecting when you're drafting him inside the top 30. A lot of drafts he went inside like the top 18, top 16, So I think owners are probably not thrilled. Owners aren't liking what they see. Even in full PPR, he's been a little bit of a bummer, which is hard to do. You kind of drafted him for that receiving upside. Just generally speaking, this is a guy who the last 2 years has had 1,500 plus yards of production per season. He was the RB3 last year. And Jacksonville does kind of get momentum and they get going toward the end of the year. I mean, I do think Doug Peterson's a competent coach. Trevor Lawrence on paper was a competent quarterback. I don't know, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. It's really to bet on Trevor Lawrence. If you really think Trevor's done, you maybe don't want to touch it. I don't think he's done. I don't think the offense is done. I don't think the Jaguars are done. I just think they're not what we thought they were. But not what we thought they were leaves a lot of room for fantasy production in there. And this year is very dry for running back. Very rarely are you going to find a potential top 10 weekly running back. And again, he's right on the border of holding that production, but the potential, I mean, without a doubt, it's there. He's done it for 2 years. Very rarely are guys like that going to be for sale. And I do think he's on sale right now. I do think I want to try to buy on him. I am sending offers on him like crazy. Who you can trade him for is going to be a little tough because running back's so thin. It's probably more like a receiver crossover. But take a look and see. Like if I could get him for Brian Robinson Jr. right now, I'm probably doing that. It depends how bullish you are on some of the injured running backs trading the handcuffs, Charbonnet or Mason. You could get like him plus someone for Mason right now. Depends what you think of the injured running backs, but I would be trying to buy on ETN. And then Christian Watson, last one. He saw 4 to 5 red zone targets his 1 week with Jordan Love. He slipped in the mud in Brazil. If he did not slip in the stupid mud in Brazil, he would have had a 20-point game with Jordan Love. He has only seen 7 targets this year, and his line on 7 targets is 580 and 1. He is a high-end productive receiver when he plays with his quarterback. When he plays with Lover Rogers, he's been great. It's really a shame, dude. I've loved this guy for 2 years. I've been in on him for 2 years. I'm so excited to see him get love. The Brazil game's weird, and then Love has been out for 2 weeks. I would guess he's almost free right now. I actually picked him up off waivers this week. Someone dropped him. If you can get him as a throw-in on a trade, do that. Please do that. I truly, I'm willing to take some shit from this from Ted on this one toward the end of the year. I truly believe he will be like a low end to mid range RB2 once Love gets back. I get him thrown into a back end of a trade. You're not going to regret it.
I don't think it's that ridiculous of a projection, right? Like we've already seen the tough part about Watson, right, is we've seen early on the high end potential from him. Then it's just been like weird injured years. Like there were years he was going like in the fourth round, right? So a lot of managers weren't happy with him. It really is a bet on the talent and the Packers offense and what you think Jordan Love is. I don't know. I've never really been a Love guy, but Malik Willis looked like a competent NFL quarterback in that system, which he has never looked like before. I think it's worth a shot. All right, time for my buy lows. We'll start with Brandon Ayuk. So a lot of people are freaking out about the San Francisco 49ers off to a extremely disappointing 1-2 start, and BA has been pretty much invisible. He has never been the best wide receiver in any game this year. And I get it. I would imagine a lot of managers are probably freaking out about him. He cost you like a third or fourth round pick. He was drafted high. He's just not been returning. I'm sure BA managers who like aren't 49ers fans were sick seeing Jawan Jennings go for almost 50 points against the Rams on Sunday. I mean, the encouraging thing about BA, right, is Purdy has looked good. All of the questions, right, like, Purdy has just been eternally disrespected by everyone in the league. They've called him like just a beneficiary of the system that he's in, system quarterback, all that good stuff. But he's missing basically everyone right now, and he's still throwing up 3 touchdown games, playing clean. For BA, you just have to keep in mind, right? Like this is a rust issue. He held out basically all off season until like a week before the season started. We kind of knew, as following the Niners pretty closely, it would be a slow start for him. I was drafting Debo over Ayuk where I could. I know in a lot of drafts BA was going first based on last year's production. For me, I was a little lower on BA because I knew the start would be a little bit slow. But the fact of the matter is everyone's injured right now in San Francisco. They need someone to step up, and the rust will come off of him pretty soon. So I would pick at managers, especially panicking ones. If you can find a 1-2 or 0-3 Brandon Ayuk manager, maybe throw a 2-for-1 or something, right? Or one of the higher performing wide receivers that you might want to try and get off of, like Jamison Williams, for example. I think that's worth a look. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, he's not a good player anymore. It is just rust. Next one is Ramondre Stevenson coming off the 0.6 point Thursday fantasy game. So he sunk a lot of managers' fantasy weeks before Sunday even started. That always feels really bad, right? And the Patriots looked really, really terrible on Thursday playing the Jets. So, I mean, I don't know. He's been good the first 2 weeks, but maybe like you get an overreactive manager who like Ramondre lost the week for them this week, and you might be able to steal him. The Patriots are a run first team with Alex Van Pelt. It's running the ball is what they want to do, and that goes through Ramondre. They're not a drop back and pass team. They are a run the ball down your throat team. So he is the centerpiece of this offense. It's not a sexy offense to be in, right? But he's going to be getting the usage. And for me, I've always leaned I'm a big usage guy and what your role is in an offensive fantasy, and Ramondre's role is such that he's going to be a bell cow, and there's not that many of that in the league anymore. Like I said, you might be able to fleece a panic manager. I wouldn't pay too much for him. I kind of value Ramondre as like a rock solid RB2, but you might be able to trade a couple of bench pieces, a couple of depth pieces for him, depending on what a manager needs, right? Like especially if they have injured wide receivers or whatever, you might be able to do a little flip ski there. Then last but not least, Jonathan Brooks. This is a good one because I was not drafting Jonathan Brooks anywhere during draft season, right? Because at least my philosophy coming into the season was I'm not going to draft players that are already injured. Shout out BDGE. I took that one from him, but like I totally co-sign on that. I think it's sketchy to try and like draft guys that are already hurt coming into the year. But fact of the matter is, this Panthers team looked changed to me on Sunday. They look like an actual NFL offense now. Chuba Hubbard looked like CMC Jr. against the Raiders. I mean, this is going to be a run first team with some passes thrown in, right? Like they're not going to be like the Patriots offense. I actually like their outlook a little bit better than the Patriots offense at this point. And yeah, Jonathan Brooks kind of fits into the thing I said about Xavier Legette, right? Like this is going to be a team that's not going to win that many football games, and they're going to be all about scouting their young talent. Jonathan Brooks, he was, I think he was the first running back off the board this year in the draft. He was the highest drafted running back in drafts. He was good at Texas. He's coming off the ACL, so I would expect they ease him in a little bit. But man, if Chuba Hubbard, who I don't think is that great of a player, looked like that in the offense, he could he could be really good here. He could be a steal. And the good news is managers haven't seen him play yet, right? So it's easier to buy a player that hasn't taken a snap and look good in the NFL yet versus one that already has played and looks good. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't give up too much for him, but you could probably get him as an add-on to a deal, right? Like maybe a 2 for 2 type of trade, or you just say, oh, by the way, I want Jonathan Brooks too, and potentially you could get him. I like it. I think his worst case scenario is he's a handcuff, and his best case scenario is he is the A side of a split backfield, which is not too bad.
Yeah, not too exciting on the sell highs this week. Devon A-Chain. Ted had him on his sell highs last week. I tried to work out deals this week. To me, I mean, Ted is concerned that his usage drops off, and that's what caused it. And actually, his rushing, by the way, for his whole efficiency thing, it's his receiving that's been extremely efficient. His rushing is actually bottom like 10 in the league in efficiency. He's down there with Zeke and Rashad White right now in efficiency for rushing metrics. I'm not so much worried about the usage. What I'm really more feeling about A-Chain, there's so much uncertainty you're taking on right now with 1 to 2 backfield mates getting healthy, Tua being injured, and who knows when. A-Chain was very injury prone last year. It hasn't been a problem this year, but sort of was. He came up lame on one of the weeks already, and then ended up playing. And the fantasy community seems to universally regard him as like a top 5 running back and top 10 overall asset. I mean, every show I'm seeing, right, the guys will talk about like, you have your big guys, your Saquon, your Bijan, and your Hall, and then your A-Chain. And I don't know if he's in that tier. And if people do think that, and people do think he's even an upgrade over guys that are a little bit lower, like, dude, if you can do, so I have on that roster, I have one A-Chain roster out of 10. I have Drake London, Chris Godwin, Neighbors, Rice, and then A-Chain is my running back, right? I am if you can do a pairing where you end up getting like a Gibbs back on that roster or a Jonathan Taylor back on that roster, and maybe like a little bump or something equivalent at not a little bump, you would need a little bump because he technically does have a little more market value than those guys right now, but then you can get a small upgrade at another position too and take on way less injury risk, or go for one of the premium receivers. Like I'm really trying to pick CD in that league. I did send an offer for Chase. I doubt the guy will do it now. But yeah, man, if you can take some swings like that, I would take swings on Justin Jefferson. Depending on how this shakes out with AJ Brown, maybe wait till after his bye week. But like if you could do an A-Chain for AJ Brown swap and then, get a running back that's kind of comparable in there, do it. Do it. I'm trying to sell him.
I would, if it's AJ Brown, I would buy him now. I would buy him now before AJ Brown gets back on the field, and the projected points for A-Chain are high. This is the last call, boys. This is the last call. Raheem Mostert is coming back next week. We saw the Tim Boyle Dolphins on Sunday against the Seahawks. It's going to get so much worse. It's going to get so much worse. The panic is coming this week. This is your last call. You can get
And
some.
I don't want to steal your take, dude. You were on this a week earlier. To me, again, we disagree a little bit on why, but dude, the uncertainty's mounting. Like there are a lot of factors. Like why not just unload all of that risk while he's lost almost no value so far? You were right. So I just want to make that clear. That was your call that I kind of piggybacked on since I'm the one who owns part of him. I'm out.
And listen, boys, like if you're counting on the Dolphins just temporarily being bad until Tua comes back, there is no guarantee that Tua is able to do what he has done the past couple of years when he comes back. The last time he had one of these horrible concussions and came back, he did not look the same for the rest of the year. There is a chance that the entire season is torpedoed with or without Tua. It's certainly torpedoed without Tua. Get off him now. It's gonna be too late next week.
Dude, there's a chance he comes back. What if he gets knocked out again? So what if you wait 4 weeks, he plays a week, and then comes back and gets cracked again?
Yeah,
And you're gonna hold A-Chain like you could have had AJ Brown, you could have had Jonathan Taylor, Jameer Gibbs. You're
yeah.
gonna hold A-Chain like not willing to do it.
I
I'm
wonder
out.
how that guy on Twitter is doing. That I was saying you should buy JT last week. JT goes for 102 tuds this week, 30-point game. A chain
Well,
like 30 receiving yards, 20 rushing yards. Hope that guy's
dude, it
doing good.
really was like you deserve credit for that because I kind of gave you shit about it. But like, dude, what do you? I mean, is Jonathan Taylor's almost unsellable now, right? Like someone's gonna just tell you, no, I'm not doing that. It looks like Anthony Richardson can't competently pass the ball, and look at the feeding that Jonathan Taylor's getting. I don't think someone's trading you A-Chain for Taylor right now.
Well, I think this guy on my sell high list, the first one, and I know this is going to hurt Yanni, you might be able to get Jonathan Taylor for this guy, and it is Malik Neighbors. Listen, Malik Neighbors, he has been good all year. He is the fantasy wide receiver one right now, and he had a coming out game on Sunday. Like it was not just he was good. He made some of the most unbelievable catches and dominated a Cleveland defense, a Cleveland secondary, which is Cleveland has their problems, but that is a good secondary. That was a dominating performance. Malik Neighbors is here. So again, I just want to urge the viewers. I call it sell highs because we are really selling these players high. I know it hurts. I know that a lot of some of these guys that are on the list you might not want to part with, right? Because they've been so good for you. But hear me out on this one. I love the player. I think he's legit. It has absolutely nothing to do with him. It has to do with Danny Dimes and the New York Giants. Right now, Malik Neighbors has somehow elevated Danny Dimes to the point where he looks like a competent NFL quarterback, which did not exist last year. Dimes is terrible last year.
Dude,
So
it didn't exist 2 weeks ago.
yeah,
2 weeks ago.
yeah,
2 weeks ago, this did not. This was not possible. It's just Neighbors.
dude,
Same thing. They extended him.
he's a force multiplier, man. He's so good. He's so good at football. Like if you're a Giants fan, I would be incredibly excited to have him on your team. But this is just about the uncertainty of Dimes turning into a pumpkin. Dimes is liable to turn into a pumpkin at any time, and you're also one injury away from the Tommy DeVito experience, which I mean, even with a player like Malik Neighbors, I don't know how well he would do in that scenario. Right now, like I was watching the Underdog Fantasy Show last night, and they were talking about, listen, other than CeeDee Lamb, like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and they threw in one other guy. Who else would you rather have than Malik Neighbors? So right now, he is being valued as a top 10 to top 5 kind of guy. People are excited about what they saw. This is the chance to strike. If you have a roster, like say for example Yanni's roster that somehow was able to get Rashee Rice, Malik Neighbors, and Chris Godwin on it.
Three rosters. I have two rosters with Rashee Rice and
Yep.
Neighbors on it.
Say for example you have a roster that wants to get out of your A chain, right? Like if you're gonna be able to get a premium running back for somebody, Malik Neighbors has that type of trade value right now. Um, Again, I would put the price on Neighbors is very, very, very expensive, right? Like treat him like a premium asset because he is. And we're not selling him because of the player, we're selling him just because of the situation and the uncertainty behind it. But yeah, I mean, if you don't sell him, just enjoy the ride while it lasts. You never know. I have more faith in Neighbors rest of the season than I do for A Chain. That's for sure. But I think he should be mentioned as a sell high because of that concern. Next one, is Jamison Williams. I actually have a couple Jamison Williams rosters this year, and it has felt great so far. He had a rough week 3. Again, this is roster dependent. So if you need him, don't move him because I like him for the rest of the season. This isn't like a Jamison Williams is a bum, get rid of him type of deal. But the reason I'm putting him on the sell high list is it seems very clear to me that the Detroit Lions have the kind of prime San Francisco 49ers problem, where they have five premium like fantasy guys that they just cannot reasonably feed every week, and some of these guys are going to be missing certain weeks. So you have Gibbs, you have Monty, you have Amon Ra, you have Jameson, and you have Laporta if he's healthy, right? It's just for a team that's supposed to be run first. Like I just don't see the volume. I know that Jameson has been good for you. I get it. But I would just kind of see what you can pick for him, right? Like for me, I sent out a trade. It was like Jameson Williams and another piece for. I think I offered. I was trying to get Brandon Ayuk and like Jonathan Brooks or something, right? Like those are the type of deals where you can maybe flip. Who I would probably classify Jameson as a boom bust, just kind of based on what his
Yeah.
usage is, right, and his role. Like if you can turn that into like into a consistent like wide receiver two, I would be willing to do that, right? Like it's just you know,
Would you rather Tank Dell or Jameson? Tank Dell. Yeah, Tank Dell or Jameson this season.
that's close for me. I view them almost as the
You
same type
trade
of player.
Jameson for Tank.
Mm, I probably wouldn't. No, it's close though. Like I would
Yeah.
trade Jameson for like BA. I would trade him for Devonte Adams. Like I'm trying with Jameson, especially since like he's like a top he's like in the top 10 right now in receiving yards, right? Like I would be trying to target those highly drafted wide receivers that have been disappointing so far. And I like Tank too. It's just I see them as like deep threats, right? Deep threats on a offense that's spreading the ball out. So it's just kind of like same to me, you know. And then last but not least, we got Kyron Williams on here, a guy that I was not drafting at all. I refused to draft him in ADP. I don't believe this is kind of like a heady call for me, right? Like I know this is probably a minority pick, but I don't think Kyron Williams is that good of a football player. And I think the market is way higher on him than he should be. He's valued as a top 5 to 10 RB. Like if you watch other content, right? If you watch, I don't know, Fantasy Flock or whatever, right? Or you watch anybody who gives out like weekly rankings, Kyron Williams has been consistently in the top 10, which I mean, you're free to do that, but I don't agree. The Rams are just they're too injured right now, right? Like that's barely a football team at this point. They had a great win against the 49ers, but I don't know, man. A three touchdown game, it feels fluky to me. It feels like the Niners more blew that game than Kyron Williams just elevated himself. This is a guy that you could probably trade at a high value right now. He's also like all three of these guys that I picked this week are kind of like the fantasy darling guys, right? Like, you know, the meme is always kind of like, you pick on the idiot league mate. We're going for the content brand guys. We're going for the guys that like watch a bunch of content and think they're really smart, right? And have like their priors from the year. So I don't know. I think you might be able to flip him for a premium asset. Kind of to Yanni's point, like it's been very hard to find a good running back. So it depends on your roster, right? Like if you only have like if your hero RB with Kyron Williams, don't trade him for another wide receiver, right? But if you can do what you view as like a level up to your roster, right? If you can trade up somewhere and get a premium asset, then I would do it. I would do. Well, I don't know if anyone would do Jonathan Taylor anymore, but would you do Jamar Chase for Kyron Williams?
Yeah, but no one would do that.
Yeah, after this week, I guess not, huh?
No, to me, it's more like the lower performing, like high end receivers. Like you could do Kyron and a receiver for AJ Brown and a lower tier running back.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you could get a 2-for-1. To me, that's sort of what I'm looking at is just if you get a massive upgrade at receiver and a competent running back, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
So but it's going to be really hard to find a 1-for-1. He's like the consensus RB 5 or 6 rest of season. So
Mm-hmm.
like when you say like I want a 1-for-1 for him, it's kind of hard to find an equivalent,
Yeah.
1-for-1. But like, you could you get like Kenneth Walker and Devonta Smith or something crazy like
Oh yeah.
that? Yeah,
I
like
don't.
if you could do something like that, like where you get two really nice high end wide receiver and running back twos, do it. I think.
I'm not
Um,
even a Kenneth Walker guy, and I would rather have Kenneth Walker on my roster than Kyron Williams rest of season. Like that. That's how out I am on him as like a talent and a player. But I know that's a minority. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us this week. If you made it through the video, thank you. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. let us know in the comments if you actually followed through on any of these trades. Let us know like the sickest trade you got this year. And
Yep.
we will catch you on Thursday for the head coach episode.
Yep. Thanks, guys.